there's actually been another piece of the puzzle that's been happening in the background that we haven't really talked about. And now is the time for Clint and I to kind of bring you guys in to do the complete story of what's been going on with our Pikes Peak car. We were seeing values as we were testing on Pikes Peak that were higher than the cap that we were using on the system was rated for. Through it, we realized we had about a centimeter air pocket at the top of our expansion tank. So actually between testing and race week, we pulled the engine again to check the head studs. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatirons.tuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Flatiron Syndicate Podcast. We are here today with Clint from Turning Concepts because the time has come to talk about engines and configurations and, Clint and I have had a ton of conversations because of some of the issues that we have run into with our Pikes Peak car engine this year that Turning Concepts has built, and we've worked through a lot of things. We're learning a lot, and it is time to come and have a conversation with you all about what we found, what we've run into, and kind of give you guys a little bit more of the story of what's going on, because there's actually been another piece of the puzzle that's been happening in the background that we haven't really talked about. And now is the time for Clint and I to kind of bring you guys in to do the complete story of what's been going on with our Pikes Peak car. Yeah. And as a start, though, let's talk about how we picked this engine configuration, because the biggest change that we made this year, of course, was the engine, because we changed the engine and turbo package, and the goal here was to find something that would give us a little bit more capability than the stock components we've been using. Because up until this point, we've been using a stock short block, stock cylinder head, stock cams, stock everything, nothing modified. And this year we decided, okay, well, now we want to kind of push that. And one of the goals was honestly just more power band and more RPM range. So Clint, with kind of that, and then I guess the other key piece of the puzzle here for us was knowing that we were not going to go to something that was more bespoke, that was not off the shelf, that was not new. Cost was a configuration here too, because we know we needed not one but two engines. Well, so yeah,
we didn't know we needed one but two, but we wanted two, which does affect the budget.
Yeah,
it does affect the budget and a number of things. But you and I started this conversation long before Pikes Peak started, and we discussed the goals and the budget and the timeline. These are three big factors in something like this: power goals, budget, timeline. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about the engine configuration first, and the configuration that we came up with and why. And it's very interesting because Pikes Peak is a very unique situation when it comes to motorsport, simply because of the elevation change. It is absolutely massive. And at the very basic level of coming up with an engine configuration, we have to return to caveman times, because ideally what we want to do is we want to make fire. And we need three components to make fire. We need an ignition source. In our case, it's going to be a spark plug. We need fuel. In our case, E85. And then we need an oxidizer. Those are the 3 points of your triangle that you need to make a basic fire. We can control 2 out of the 3. We can control spark. We can throw a bunch of spark at it. We can take spark away. We have, for our power goals for what we're doing, we have plenty of spark, and we can fully control that. Same thing with fuel. We can deliver more fuel than we could ever possibly burn into this engine. The limiting factor is the oxidizer, oxygen. And there's a huge difference from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. So first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to have an engine where I could get as much oxygen, as much air into it as possible. We already know from our established power goals, when you and I were talking, we were looking at somewhere south of 500, 550 horsepower. Not a huge amount of power by a number of standards that we see on cars today, but a nice bump in power, and something that is usable. So
Yes.
I needed to find some way to get the limiting factor as much under control as we could. And the only thing that I can do is try and get as much of that air into that engine as possible. And to do so, the best thing to do is make that job, make it as easy as possible for that air to get in there. So we did a couple things that were unique from the head standpoint. First off, we used good hardware. We used Ferrea valve springs. We've been very happy with those over the year. They've proven to be very reliable. They can take the abuse of a race environment. So that was an easy decision. If you look at your standard EJ engine, you're looking at a 36 millimeter intake valve and you're looking at a 32 millimeter exhaust valve. This is the diameter of the head.
Yep.
That is your stock sizes. A common upgrade out there is to go +1, port the heads, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yep.
I didn't quite do that. We did something that we learned back in the 2009-2010 timeframe. I was reading a book by a fella, I believe his name was Roger Bywater, who used to do engine development for Jaguar, did the race team, so on and so forth, back in the 80s when Jaguar was a force to be dealt with in the racing world. And I came across a very interesting portion of that book about valve size, and specifically the ratio of intake valve to exhaust valve. And Subaru's ratio of intake valve to exhaust valve, by what he laid out in this book, was pretty good. But if you moved the intake valve to something that was commonly available from an aftermarket perspective, a 37 millimeter valve, that ratio improved with what, in comparison to what he outlined in the book. So way back then, we tried it on the silver race car, and it worked great, and we were super happy with that. So one of my factors in being able to get air in, thinking about this, getting air into the engine is, let's make the intake valve a little bit bigger. Yeah, the pressure I make is the pressure I'm going to make to get it out of the engine, and at the power levels we're talking, I have no problem with that with the stock size valve, the 32 millimeter exhaust valve. So we kept that. We made the intake valve a little bit bigger. I did a bowl blend. I did a different cut on the valve seat, all to smooth the airflow, to make the job easier so I could get more air in the same amount of time. Now I didn't do a full port on the heads. I wanted that velocity from the stock size throat in the head. I just got rid of that lip and made that valve seat a little bit easier for that air to work its way in. So that was one of the first things that came to mind when coming up with this configuration, was what we had done many years ago that we were very happy with. Now I'm looking at an environment that eventually reaches low oxygen content.
Right.
We went with a larger turbo because that makes sense. More pressure, more air, get it in the engine, burn your fuel, set off your spark, make more power. Pretty easy caveman type stuff.
Well, and in this case, the G30 770, it's also a more efficient turbo than effectively the stock location GT3071 stock location that we were using. So more efficient on the exhaust side, more efficient on the compressor side.
Which is a big win on both sides of it right
Yep.
there. So we had a change in turbo, run a little bit more boost pressure than the previous years. We get some more airflow of that very precious commodity, that oxygen that we need.
Yep.
So now we're stuffing this air into this engine, and we got to the short block. And because Pikes Peak also has a lot of mixed environment of tight turns, long straights, big sweepers, fast sweepers, slow corners. It's a whole mixed bag. I needed something. Well, I wanted to configure something that had as broad a power range as possible. And we have been playing around with a short stroke motor, a decreased stroke.
Yeah.
And we're not talking anything crazy. We're talking stock components. So we decided to do a 234. And the way we did that is we kept the bore size, just used a stock case, and we used a stock 2-liter crank.
Right.
So a 75 millimeter crank as opposed to STI 79 millimeter crank. We did the appropriate length rods. We did the correct wrist pin height on the pistons. Compression ratio did come up a little bit. Reason being, we're using all off-the-shelf components, a mix and match of components. I didn't want to do anything custom because if there's a problem, now you have a custom problem. If I need a
Right.
replacement part with an off-the-shelf part, it's very easy to get.
Which
Should we have an issue?
worth mentioning that part of what makes this possible is that now a de-stroked EJ235 is common enough that there are common off-the-shelf components now to which kind of you picked and choose the best of the best from, but there are off-the-shelf options to do this.
Yes, there are off-the-shelf options, and you're going to get into that argument from people of there's no replacement for displacement, so on and so forth. A few factors that come into play here where I'm going to argue against that. One, I am more comfortable carrying more revs on a de-stroke motor.
Yep.
Two, I feel just based upon our data and our experience of doing de-stroke motors now, you get a broader power band, which is more useful in a very mixed bag situation, such as Pikes Peak, with all of its variety of corners, straights, sweepers, what have you. And this is something that came up. I talked to Devin from our race team a while ago. She is also running a 234 this season. And a lot of comments were about the displacement. And a lot of people were acting like it was the end of the world. Oh, you've gone down in displacement. This is horrible. It's going to be awful. You're not going to make any torque. I sent you a dyno plot of Devin's car when it was 2.5 and a 234 from this season. Back-to-back comparison. The only difference being the short block and tuning for the change in displacement.
So same turbo, same fueling, but just different short block and just a tune to compensate for the difference in displacement.
Correct. And you can throw up a graphic of that. I've sent you the back-to-back dyno plot. We're carrying more revs on that engine than the stock revs. And people are going to say, yeah, you could do that with aftermarket components on a 2.5. Yes, you are absolutely correct. But when you show that, you're going to be able to show the larger power band that is available. The peak on torque, not as high, but a pretty negligible difference. And I think a lot of it comes back to geometry, efficiency, and that de-stroke, you don't lose as much displacement as people are led to believe or think they believe. And I have a demonstration of that.
Okay.
Practical demonstration of that.
All
I
right.
think you're going to love this.
Yes.
All right.
So like when you think about a 2-liter bottle, a 2-liter bottle of soda, that's 2 liters, and then another half liter, that's 2.5 liters of displacement. So like,
well, I'm gonna do you one better.
Okay.
So here's what we've got. I got my magic cart here.
Yeah.
In my magic cart, I have a liter. And I tried to do a little bit contrasting color fluid so you can see what's going on here. All right. So there's 1 liter. Both those engines have that.
Yep.
Here is your 2nd liter.
Okay.
This is your Subaru EJ20 right here. Here is your 2 liters. Okay. And I have to admit, I did borrow from a meme because I love this meme. I think it's hilarious. There is your half liter.
Okay.
Let me see, get the label for you.
Yep.
This is your EJ 2.5. This is 2.5 liters.
Okay.
Right here. All right. And this is where the meme comes in. It's important. This is 340 milliliters. 1 liter, 2 liters, 2.34. 1 liter, 2 liter, 2.5. Now, everybody can do the meme now, and they can point at the thing. Kind of meaningless until we actually compare them side by side.
Okay. And Clint, you came prepared like nobody's business.
I did come prepared. I've been thinking about this for some time. It's a good way to illustrate this. Now, they both have 2 liters. We can take those away. We don't need that anymore.
That's
because here is the part that people are arguing over is 2.5 versus 2.34. There is your difference.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
160 milliliters. Now, if we're losing 160 milliliters and you compare it to the dyno plot that you're going to throw up there on this
Yeah.
podcast, and you compare available power band and torque and onset of power, I think you're going to find this guy here, your 2.34, is an elegant solution to meeting those goals.
Yeah.
We didn't just make this up. We've done this in the past. We're familiar with how the 234 runs. This wasn't a shot in the dark. This wasn't a new experiment by any means whatsoever. We're really happy with this motor. If we weren't happy with this motor, or we didn't think that it would apply for this situation, we would have stayed with the 2.5. It's that simple.
And our experience putting this in, like actually putting Scott in the car to drive it the first time, he was, how do you explain torque? It's hard, but I think the driver's seat is the best thing to think of. Torque is kind of the push in the seat, like when you feel like the acceleration is coming on. With the
Yes,
2.5 liter, with the 2.5 liter, it was much more like a mountain with our previous setup. So it would push, it would come on, and then it would kind of fall off. And you could feel the taper off, and you kind of like once you kind of like the seat's not pushing you in the back anymore, that's the prompt to, hey, you better shift to get back to that big torque spike so you can get the big push again. And the difference with the 235 is that it doesn't push initially is not as hard, but it lasts a lot longer.
Lasts a lot longer. It's very linear.
Yep.
It is a good feel. If you don't have to be as high in the RPM band to get a response.
Yep.
Meaning you have more usable space in each gear shift.
And for us, because we're running the sequential with short gears, we want, if we're in a gear like that power band, the significance of that is it means that if you, like, whereas before Scott was having to shift a lot because he wanted to just stay on top of that torque peak, and so he's having to shift a bunch of times just to keep it feel like the car is pushing and moving forward.
Is accelerating.
And now
and
he can stay in a gear a little bit longer.
Yeah, and
like
every time you shift, that's time lost.
Yeah.
There's a reason why dual clutch transmissions, PDK transmissions, have become so popular in motorsport, is the speed at which they can shift. That is time saved on your lap.
Yeah. And I can tell you empirically, like the car felt much, much faster, and it felt like there was way more usable power. And it's a very different characteristic with this 2.34 engine compared to the 2.5 liter engine. And it was definitely a big plus.
So we now have a displacement idea of what we want to do for the engine. And it's going to be using off-the-shelf components.
Yep.
Nothing custom, because anything custom causes a custom problem when you have it.
Yep.
And in the race environment, something that's you get one shot at Pikes Peak per year. That's it.
Literally one run. Like
one run.
One go.
That is it. So you've got to be ready to go. So we didn't need anything unusual, and hence why we went with things that were off the shelf, easy to replace if we needed them, easy to source if we needed them. So going through the whole configuration of the motor, we used an OEM 2-liter crank, 75 millimeter crank. We used an off-the-shelf Callie's plus 2 millimeter rod. We used an off-the-shelf JE piston. We used brand new Subaru OEM head or case castings.
And cylinder heads.
Brand new OEM cylinder heads. Berea valves, 37 millimeter intake, 32 millimeter exhaust. Berea valve springs. We used GSC Stage 2 cams. People may ask, why did you use GSC Stage 2 cams? Because we have found that on your OEM or your Stage 1 cams, when you're carrying out the RPM so much to maintain that power level, the cams stop breathing. And we needed this to breathe. If I went with Stage 3, I would shift the power band too much to the right. The Stage 2 cam, the 272 duration cam, was a nice middle ground that gave us a nice broad power band.
Yep.
Your headers, off the shelf stuff. Your turbo, off the shelf stuff. Injectors, off the shelf. engine control off the shelf from Haltech. Tuning, you got a good tuner.
Yep.
He did a great job. This makes for a winning combination.
Yes. And this is a similar combination that you've used in other cars you guys support too.
This is not the first time we've built this motor.
Yep.
We've built them over the years. Head studs we used. Initially we used ARP 625 studs, the nice stud.
Yep.
Even though on paper and from experience, that stud would have been overkill for the power levels that we were going for. So what we ended up with was we had a very nice harmony of requirements, time, and cost. And we're
Yep.
going to go to the map for this one.
Well, and while you head over there, I just want to throw out, so because we were going to Pikes Peak with the turbo that we were running, the G series, the G3770, turbine speed is a big factor. And so we limited the power that we were making based on the turbine speed because we did not want it to overspeed at elevation. Because as you go up in elevation, it's easy for that compressor wheel to end up spinning faster and faster. So we actually ended up landing right at about 500 horsepower just based on the turbine speed where we had the car tuned is in Longmont, Colorado, which is about 50, I think it's 5,200 feet in elevation.
Okay.
And so basically, and then there's a function in the Haltech where we're limiting that turbine speed. That is the deciding factor. So it's not based on boost pressure, it's based on turbine speed. And so like we would not go over that. So actually when we went up onto the mountain, it was a little bit less. And I say that to say, like, as far as the fasteners and everything like that, we're actually making less power at the start line of Pikes Peak because the turbo is spinning a little bit. Well, the turbo is spinning the same speed, but it's making a bit less boost pressure. So really everything that we had picked to work with this engine and the power that we're using, it all fits together. It should work. It should be tried and tested at this level.
Yeah, and we're gonna go through the three of those. But let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Which is our equilibrium.
Yeah.
Of our requirements.
Okay.
And I'm gonna do that. I like triangles.
Yes. For those listening
They're
at home,
nice.
Clint has just drawn a nice triangle on the whiteboard here.
I've just drawn a nice. Can you see that? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So down here, we're going to call this P. This is going to be our power. And we were looking for something that was less than or equal to 500 horsepower.
Yep.
And through that, we have torque requirements and so on and so forth. And over here at this corner, we're going to call that money.
Yep.
Because that is always a factor when building a race car when you're on limited budget.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I'm not on an unlimited budget with anybody.
No.
So that is a factor.
Yes.
The other thing is time. How much time do you have to put this together to make your single run up the mountain? They're not changing the date for you.
Right.
You're not going to be able to call them up and say, hey, this is John. Can we move Pikes Peak a week? We got to. No, there is a hard deadline on this. And that is a factor. And the configuration we came up with, 234, stage 2 cams, new head castings, array of valves, new turbo setup, all of these things made a nice, happy triangle. We had an agreement on power levels, when it had to be delivered, and how much budget we had.
Yeah.
Real easy.
And the time was a big factor here in that the amount of custom machine work that needed to be done for these engines, which was relatively minimal, and basically now something that Clint, that you all could control in-house.
Yes.
So you guys did any machine work that needed to be done, like for the oversized valves and the copper ring,
and everything
was
else
all done in-house.
That was all of the head work was done in-house by me. I'm actually the one that does the heads here. The final engine assembly, that was done by Ethan. Ethan has his own air-controlled room. He lives in there. He does an amazing job of assembling engines. Absolutely amazing job of it.
Yeah.
I don't assemble engines anymore. I haven't done so in a long time. Why? Because Ethan does an amazing job. He probably does a better job than I did.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest.
But then having that control means that, once we came to this and we started talking pretty much right after Pikes Peak last year. I was able to put my side of the parts together, send them your way. You were able to get your side of the parts together. And then it's just, now you got everything, and it's just a matter of assembly. So time was really not an obstacle going in, getting ready for
No.
this year.
And
Which was,
because we were using off the shelf parts with no major changes that are
yep,
outside of our control, cost could be controlled as well.
yep.
So we're in full control of this triangle.
And where this was important for us too is because we're changing the engine. I mean, I had to get you all the stuff. You had to build the engine. We had to get it back, put in the new engine, the new turbo kit, and then get it tuned, and then shake the car down. So we had, once the engine was to us, we actually had a lot of work that we needed to do to get it done in time so that we could be ready for Pikes Peak. So getting things done in a timely manner, even with, let's call it 6 months, 9 months to play with, like if you're going to do some
It,
like crazy custom machine work that's going to take like 3 to 6 months, you can burn through that spare time in a heartbeat.
exactly. And so we're going to come back to this triangle throughout our conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it up there for now. But let's talk about what happened.
Okay.
So we got everything together for the first motor.
Yep.
Shipped that out to you. And you guys got that in a record-setting amount of time.
Well, I wouldn't say it was record setting, but Viet did an amazing job, and we got everything, the turbo kit, everything on the car, and then the car to Harvey, our tuner, and we started working through it. And basically the initial break-in and the initial tune actually went pretty well. There's one issue which I think we've mentioned, which was we were using a Killer Bee expansion tank. It was doing weird things to the radiator cap that we were using, and so we were seeing high coolant pressure, which is a metric that we measure. And so we ended up realizing that, and then we put on just a standard STI 1.3 bar cap. That corrected the issue because now the cap was getting squeezed the right amount. And that's basically where we completed the tuning, and then that's where we started doing our track test with the car.
Okay. And at this point in time, everything was looking great.
Yep, everything was fine. Power was great. The power band was great. And in fact, we had 95% of an amazing first day at the track. The car was
Good.
doing well, shaking down, putting down good times. And then what happened was on the last session on the first track testing day, basically we ended up pushing coolant into the overflow tank, and we saw a minor overheat indicated, which I think we only hit 225 degrees. But running water for coolant, that's over the boiling point, so we still had overheated it. And we brought the car back to the shop that night. We were scheduled to go back to the track the next day, which we ended up doing. But pressure testing the cooling system, we found a couple small leaks. We thought, maybe having this cap on that was bumping the pressure created a couple small leaks. So we fixed those, pressure tested the system, everything looked good. Put the car back together, went back to the track the next day, and unfortunately immediately overheated, basically in about a lap. And we did that twice, and at that point we knew that the head gaskets were probably gone at that point.
Well, and let's talk about that. Let's address that real quick.
Yeah.
Pressure and the temperature the water boils at.
Yep.
Yeah. Standard temperature and pressure, water boils at 100 degrees C. For those of us that need freedom units, 212 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
Okay. Now, some of you guys paid attention in high school chemistry and physics and so on and so forth. Other guys, much like me, slept through those things, which I should not have because I had to learn this the hard way later on in life. Pressure affects temperature and, well, the temperature that water boils in.
Yep.
The higher the pressure in your enclosed system, the higher the temperature the water boils at. The less pressure in your system, the lower the temperature your water boils at.
Right.
Let's say you're just driving around at 0 degrees of altitude or 0 feet of altitude, 70-degree day, your standard temperature and pressure, it's going to be 212 degrees Fahrenheit. You're driving down the road. Oh, hey, I'm at 210. I know that my water for my coolant is not boiling. We're all good.
Yeah.
Man, Pikes Peak has that elevation change. And with elevation change, pressure goes down. So does your boiling point of water.
Yep.
This starts to become an issue. So
yeah,
pressure, the ability to hold that pressure in your cooling system is unbelievably important in any situation, but very much so in a situation like this. And we have had a bad time with it because now you have seen the pressure go up in the cooling system, which means
Right.
something is intruding into there that shouldn't be. It should be pretty constant.
Yeah.
And as a result, there is a leak somewhere. When we're not shoving combustion gases into it, it's not sealing like it should. Your temp is going up, it's boiling your coolant, you're in for a bad time.
So
Which is
just a quick footnote here. Why we have to run water is because this is a race car and we're running up Pikes Peak. That is the requirement of the series. Because glycol coolant, which is like what you would like your standard coolant that you get at the parts store, has ethylene glycol in it, and that's slippery, especially for
Mhm.
race tires. So if you have a leak, something that breaks, a hose comes off, and you spill glycol coolant over the track, it's going to be a real bad day for everybody behind you. And on Pikes Peak, where you have cliffs and things like that, there's just no option that is not acceptable. So that's why we all have to run water as coolant. So this is the system we have to work in, and where controlling the pressure of the pressure that the system can absorb or hold to keep that boiling point high is critical, because that's where we get the heat capacity of the cooling system.
Mhm. All right, so that's engine number one. We've had an issue.
Right. So the key thing here is that we saw the issue on day 2. Clint, you and I talked, and so at that point the decision was made, let's pull engine 1. Fortunately, we had the second engine, and this is, not the circumstance that we wanted, but this is the reason that we had a backup engine. So if
Mhm.
something happens, we can pull that out. We sent it back to you to have you guys go through it. We put the second engine in, tested it, everything seemed to be good. And then for us, we went up to test on Pikes Peak. So we had 3 days of testing. It was 3 days back to back, but it's very cold on Pikes Peak. So it's a little bit of a different environment, but this is where we're going to be racing. This is the inclines and the hills and everything that we're going to be going up. And that's where we started using engine number 2.
Yeah.
Now, what we haven't really talked about, right? I think this is the first time that we've mentioned this, is after testing. Well, actually, during testing, in terms of this pressure, we monitor coolant pressure. And the reason we monitor coolant pressure is so that we have a data point for what is going on in the cooling system in terms of, cooling capacity, certainly, but that is actually a key indicator for the health of the cooling system, or the function of the cooling system. And we were seeing values as we were testing on Pikes Peak that were higher than the cap that we were using on the system was rated for. And we kind of tried to talk to ourselves into where that could be normal many different ways. But then after running it those 3 days, and we brought the car back and we kind of started going through it, we realized we had about a centimeter air pocket at the top of our expansion tank. And at this point, we had switched to the radium expansion tank with the radium cap, a 1.5 bar cap.
Mhm.
And basically at that point, seeing the elevated coolant pressure numbers and the fact that we now had air in the system, what we kind of suspected is that our head gaskets were starting to be compromised again. This is on
Mhm.
engine number 2. So actually, between testing and race week, we pulled the engine again
Mhm.
to check the head studs. And what we found as we did that is that all of the head studs, well, the majority of the head studs were actually loose. They were below the set torque value by ARP for the ARP 625 fasteners.
Yeah. Those were in engine 1 and in engine 2, 625, following the torque procedure and the instructions from ARP, torque to 100 pounds to put the clamp load,
Yep,
squish the head down onto the block.
yep,
Both engines left here at that spec.
yep.
When you checked that engine, what did you see?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go to the archives here. I believe what we saw, so 100 foot-pounds is what they were supposed to be on the driver's side. On the intake, we had 90, 92, 91, and 85 foot-pounds. And on the exhaust side, 83, 100, and 100. And then on the passenger side head, we had 83, 85, and 89. And then on the exhaust, the bottom, we had 80, 79, and 75. So the passenger side had dropped the most
The most.
of all of them. Yeah.
So, bottom line, they weren't where they were supposed to be,
Right.
and they weren't where they left. And I believe it was at this time that we checked engine number 1 because it had arrived back here. And we found
Yeah.
a very similar situation that the head studs had lost torque.
Right.
Why? We don't know. But the fact remains that they did.
Yep. Now, just to clarify too here, engine number 1, because you had fully disassembled it, the head gaskets did fail. There was signs of exhaust gas going over the head gasket. And the heads and the fasteners were loose, and there was actually damage to the case from the exhaust.
Yeah. Where we had put the fire ring, we put a copper fire ring into the deck. We did that here. Again, all these motors, items that we can control.
Yep.
So we did that here, and it had actually burned a perfect circle on the inner diameter underneath the copper ring and out the outer diameter.
Yeah.
Beautiful little perfect circle.
Yeah.
We tried welding it shut. I was not happy with the result. So we threw that case in the trash. Done. Not even gonna argue with it. Just replace it. So we got a new OEM case, where the advantage of using off-the-shelf parts comes from. We had that within an hour and a half of my making the phone call. Didn't have to do anything strange to get it.
Right.
So
and then as you guys were putting that back together, as we were checking the head stud torque on engine number 2 that we had now pulled.
Yeah.
What did you find on the rebuilt engine number 1?
On the rebuilt engine number 1, with the drop in torque value on those head studs between engine number 1, engine number 2, and actually one of the other race engines that also used 625 studs that was built at the same time, we found very similar failures. Since we bought all of the studs for these projects at the same time, your 2 sets of studs and this 3rd set of studs for one of the race team guys, thought maybe, just maybe, a bad batch. We did not know.
Right.
But what we did know is that the 625 stud, based upon our experience, and I want to be very clear about that, based upon our experience, was overkill for the power level, that lower left portion of the triangle, for what we wanted to do. So to hedge our bets, just in case, and to get it done quickly, I pulled a set of ARP 2000s from inventory.
Right.
Was it a risk? Yes. It's a call that I made based upon the data I had at the time on the 625 studs. Now, I've built plenty of motors that are less than or equal to 500 horsepower on ARP 2000s. They're plenty strong for that application. If they weren't, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
I erred on maybe we got a bad batch. I don't know. We're on a top of the triangle.
Well,
we're on a timeline here.
Yeah, at this point, we're on a really tight timeline. Yeah.
So I made the call and we switched the ARP 2000s for what we're now going to call engine number 3.
Yep.
Same guts as engine number 1. New rings, new bearings, new case.
Yep. And you're able to reuse the heads. And what did you find when you took the heads off of engine number 1 that it had the initial overheat?
You know what? I found that they were flat. So when I build a set of heads here, even if it's a brand new head, I deck it, because I have found that straight out of the box, the Subaru heads are out of spec for what they call in the service manual for flatness. I have only had one brand new out of the box OEM head be flat. Everything takes 1 to 2 thou to make flat. And how I found this on yours, I pulled a vacuum on them, on the valves, made sure everything was still sealing, checked everything over, didn't see any damage. I took some machinist dye, put it on the deck of the block, and I think I sent you pictures of this.
Yes, I think so.
So you might want to include that. But then I set my cutter on my surfacer above the deck, and I snuck up on it. And I snuck up on it half a thou at a time. And when I hit where I had zeroed my cutter, I got a nice clean cut, nothing left behind. So my resolution is half a thou. Is it possible that it was a little warped beyond a half a thou or less than a half a thou? It's possible,
Yeah.
but that's as precise as I can get on that machine.
And this is a very minimal difference. Like this is a
Minimal.
very minimal sign of any kind of warpage to these heads,
Yeah.
which would make sense because not a lot of runtime, and the temperature that we ended up hitting was relatively, I mean, 225 degrees is not bad. So that
No,
was
you
not
kept an eye
surprising.
on it. You
Yeah.
watched it. You didn't go out and continue to thrash on it when there was an issue. When there was an issue, you stopped
Yep.
and
And
you
this
reevaluated.
and the coolant pressure data, that was the key data point that let us know that something was off and will be going forward.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, you see a problem and then you stop, you don't get to that catastrophic overheat situation.
Yes.
So this is now engine number 3. Engine number
Hmm.
2, we now have out of the car. We retorqued the head studs. We put it back into the car, and this is what we started race week with.
Yes.
And based on our coolant pressure data, engine number 2 was performing like a champ.
Yeah.
Right up until qualifying, where we had a bolt shear of the timing belt tensioner, and basically engine number 2 was effectively lost at that point because the timing skipped. So,
Yes.
and that was just down to a fastener failure, which could have been in, moving stuff over, who knows what. But
It
unfortunately,
stinks.
that's what caught us out.
Yeah. It stinks. It's happened. If you go racing, it's happened to everyone
Yeah,
where a 50-cent part will ruin your entire weekend.
yeah,
I mean, we try not to let it happen,
yes,
but the truth of the matter is it does happen.
yeah.
And and it stinks. It really does.
But fortunately, we had engine number 3 back with us at this point, and that we're talking
Mhm.
about a turnaround time of about, I think you guys had it for what, 3 days, maybe 4.
I
Like it
don't I
was,
don't remember. I just know that it was a couple of really late nights.
yeah, just a couple of days. You freighted it back to us. We had it in hand, and so then we basically pulled engine number 2 and put in engine number 3. This is what we actually did the race run of Pikes Peak with, which this year was shortened.
Mhm.
But from having the data, what I can tell you is that about 2 minutes into the race run, we saw the coolant pressure spike, and then the temperature started to spike, and we knew that we had lost a head
A
gasket at
head
that point.
gasket.
And then Scott had ended up actually lifting and taking it easy because water slash coolant was coming up over the windscreen, so we knew that we had lost another head gasket.
Mhm.
And the long story short is when we took that engine out and checked the head studs, they were also loose.
Mhm.
Though the head gaskets themselves did not show any signs of having the failure like the head gaskets from
No,
engine
they
number
those
1.
head gaskets were in great condition.
Yeah,
So this gets us to the question of what happened, because we have
yeah,
now had 3 similar failures, all for the same event.
yes,
2 of them on 625s, one of them on ARP 2000s.
yep,
And I know where a lot of folks are going to go with this.
yep,
Why didn't you do 14 millimeter head studs? Why didn't you do half-inch head studs? Let's go back to the map.
yeah,
This is great. So we have our nice equilateral triangle of what we've agreed upon with budget and time that is allowed.
yeah,
When you do a 14 millimeter head stud, you have a couple factors that you need to think about. One of those factors is the cost of the studs themselves. They're a little bit more expensive than your ARP 625s. So now our corner for cost goes up a little bit. Oh, and you have to have machine work done for those studs.
yep,
That costs money and it takes time. I don't do that in house. We
right.
have a bottom end shop out at AR Fab. He does amazingly good work. I'm very happy. But because he is good, you wait according to his schedule.
Yeah,
So you got to add some time. Now, those 14 millimeter head studs are so honking large that when you put the torque on them, and I don't care what brand they are, you could be using the RCM ones, you could be using the IAG ones, you could get some 14 millimeter studs custom made from somebody. They pull your cylinders out of round.
because
Well,
you're
if they pull your
squeezing the two halves. Yeah,
they're putting all sorts of tension, and they're making the cylinders egg-shaped. Not
Yeah,
great for sealing a piston. So now you need
right.
to put a torque plate on there, install your 14 millimeter studs, tighten them down, pull everything, do a bore and hone.
Yeah,
That costs money, and it takes time. What a lot of people also don't realize is it pulls your mains out of round as well. And it's enough for it to be a concern. Now we got more money, and now we have more time.
because we have to do a line bore on the mains.
You have to do a line bore on the mains.
Yeah,
There's only one line bore that I like, and it's not with a boring bar. It's actually machining. Howard does it. The fellows over at Motion Machine do it. I believe ASF Fab did it. And I believe there's a few other places that do it as well. But the bottom line factor is, here is money, your money that you're
yeah,
spending, and you're being budget conscious because you want to run two motors. So every time you spend money on one, you get to spend the same on the other.
yep,
And there is this factor of time, the portion I don't control. To make a race, if I've got to be here at 2 a.m, I have no problem doing that. But I don't dictate somebody else's schedule. I don't dictate another business's schedule. He does the work in the order it was received and how the mills are set up. Because
yep,
it's really dumb to set up a mill to do one job and then go back to doing a run of V8s, for example. So at this point in time, with the simple solution of 14 millimeter head studs, what I have done is I have screwed up my triangle.
yeah,
None of this has changed. This
right,
point hasn't moved, but I've spent a whole lot more money, and I've spent a whole lot more time. Time I don't have. Money you dictate, I don't dictate.
right.
But it heavily weights those things for no improvement over what we had agreed upon before.
Right. And
So this
it
is
was,
something that we need to consider.
and when
And
we
this
talked,
should have been. Go ahead.
well, I was just to say, when we had this initial conversation, 14 millimeter head says, plus then we haven't even talked about closed deck, but that was another thing that came up.
Mhm.
And the cost per short block, if memory served, it went up, I want to say it was 100%.
It was quite a
It was
bit.
significant.
It was
And
quite a bit. And remember, folks, you sent me the OEM parts.
yeah, yeah, we have a little connection there. So yeah,
You've got a hookup for those.
yeah,
So the cost that you paid for one of your motors is drastically different than somebody coming off the street to pay for it.
sure. And at the time, we shouldn't have to go this far. We shouldn't have
No,
to go to this extent.
this should
And
have been
yeah,
a slam dunk. This is
and
a
and I'm
motor we've built many times.
yeah,
It's a motor, the 625 studs in a 2.5 configuration. We've sent up Pikes Peak before with Jeremiah Fox and did just fine.
yep,
Nothing about this should have been surprising,
right.
but it was.
And so we're trying to get to the bottom of what caused that surprise. And
Mhm.
we're doing some things on our side, and Clint turning concepts, you're doing some testing and some things on your side. I don't have those answers for you now. We need to do more work. We will bring them to you when we have them, but we don't have the answers for what happened. We have some
No,
ideas about what the contributing factors could be, but we've got to. I can't tell you anything because we got to try some more stuff. We got to do some more
yeah,
testing to
we've
get
got
to
to
it.
do some investigation, and it's real easy to blame one thing. It's real easy to point a finger and say, "Oh, that's your problem," but we don't know.
What we've got to do is we have to test some of these things that could be the problem, and we have to eliminate some of the things that can be the problem and see if we get a better result by changing out components
Mhm.
and or procedure. Yeah, and just really get to the bottom of, okay, what is going on here? What is the most likely cause for this weird set of circumstances that we're seeing? So we're going
Exactly.
to get there. I
And there's going to be a lot of guesses. There's going to be a lot
Yeah,
of speculation. There's going to be a lot of armchair engineering. What we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to establish a list of here's all of the factors that affect head gasket,
yep.
and we're going to look at each one.
Well, now
And
I
we're
want to address two of these armchair guesses that have already come up.
Mhm.
The first one is the torque on the head studs.
Okay.
So we are following the manufacturer's guidelines for these fasteners. But there's a school of thought out there that you need to go with a higher torque value on these fasteners. Well, actually, just on fasteners in general. So the first and foremost, the reason that we're not exceeding the manufacturer's specification is, one, they're way smarter than us, most likely, and they've
Exactly.
developed these like with a whole lot of R&D to get to the point where, like, this is the material, this is the fastener, this is the procedure, this is the torque, this is what will give you the proper clamp load. And if we deviate from that, we're putting ourselves out on an island, because the first thing you go and a manufacturer like ARP and say, well, we torque these 20% over your spec, but then we had this problem. That's the end of the conversation.
Exactly.
Like, well, you didn't use them as described, so yeah. But like, Clint, can you go into more detail as far as what can happen as you over torque a head stud, and why that is not as obvious a solution as it might seem?
Okay, so I am not an engineer, but I spend a lot of time talking to engineers. And I try and get them to dumb things down enough so somebody like me can understand it. And here's how it works. A stud is a spring. Now, you're probably old enough to remember this. I certainly am old enough to remember this, but slinkies, you remember slinkies,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Did you know that slinkies used to be made of metal?
Yep.
All right. Some of you guys out there that see slinkies, there was a time when slinkies were made out of metal. And every kid learned of my generation that when you took that slinky and you stretched it too much, it didn't slink anymore.
Yeah.
It lost its spring. So your head
Yep.
stud is a spring, and we're stretching that guy. And we can only stretch it to a certain point. After that, it just continues to stretch, but it doesn't have any spring back.
Right.
We don't know what that is for those fasteners. It's not something that ARP throws out there. They don't tell you what their modulus of elasticity is. Could you look it up? Yes, you could. Then there's cross section, thread pitch. How much friction do you have in the threads when you tighten things down? How did you set up the loop? So on and so forth, this, that, and the other. These are all factors that people way smarter than me do the math on and do the testing on to say, hey, your ARP 625 head stud, torque it in these steps to 100 pounds.
Right.
That is it. Could we tighten it more? Yes, we could. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. We don't know if that's going to overstretch the stud and ruin it. We don't know how much overhead that leaves, because even though you tighten that thing down, just like your little brother or little sister grabbing one into your slinky and taking off out of the room with it, and if you don't let it go fast enough, it puts all sorts of tension on that thing and it ruins your slinky. So if we torque a stud to 120 and then we put that cylinder pressure in there and we're really trying to stretch it, do we fail it? We don't know.
And there's the heat of expansion. The block is expanding, the cylinder head is expanding, just the heat, the functional heat of the engine is pulling on that head stud as well. And if you pull too hard with that expansion, then that's where you lose the spring, you lose the clamp load.
Yeah. And there's a lot of data we don't know. ARP knows it. It's either up to us to figure it out, or maybe ARP will help us out to understand what's going on here. What's the other factor that that people are going to bring up?
The other one I'm sure that people are going to mention is the Firelock head gasket, because I've had questions about it already without even getting into this point of detail of what we were running into. So what this is where you machine a groove in the deck of the block, and so your head gasket has a separate ring, the Firelock ring, that actually sits in this groove to create the seal.
Let's draw a picture so people understand. Can you see me over here?
Yep.
All right. This is your deck. There's your cylinder.
Yeah.
Head gasket or head stud. You got a gasket goes in there. It's got some threads. You tighten the head down. Real simple. Your Firelock cuts a groove into the top of this cylinder. And you throw a ring in here. And this is not to scale, but it is to illustrate what is going on. So now you have this metal ring that you've put in the top of your cylinder, and it presses against the head gasket and against everything else. And it's a concentration of pressure to seal things better.
Right.
It's a great idea, but it requires machine work. Machine work I can't do here. So to do this, I have to come back here and I have to look at this. And I have to come up here and I have to look at this. It wasn't going to happen in the time allotted.
Yep.
And as we found in the quick turnaround of engine 1 into engine number 3, we would not have been able to do this dynamically here.
Right. Well, and I think the reason that this has come up already is because this is Firelock is looked at as the ironclad head gasket solution. Subarus have a bit of a head gasket reputation, and I think currently the Firelock is the accepted best solution to ensure that your Subaru does not have a head gasket issue.
Sure.
Would you agree that is it that ironclad of a solution?
Some kind of mechanical sealing system, be it a Firelock, be it a labyrinth ring, be it a Trelleborg ring, be it a copper gasket, they all do the same thing. They're creating an area of higher pressure around the cylinder to get more of a seal than just a flat surface. Does it work? Yes, it does. Does it cost money? Yes, it does. Does it take time? Yes, it does. Is it overkill for what we were doing down here in the lower left corner? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything about this engine should have been a slam dunk. There should have been no surprises based upon our experience, based upon many shops' experience out there building engines with 625 studs. Nothing about this should have been surprising. Firelock head gasket would have been way overkill for time, budget, and the power level required.
And the turnaround time. Because with a Firelock head gasket, it is not exactly the same as being able to redeck a head, put on a new head gasket, and then you're ready to go, is it?
Correct. Because if I did have a failure and I have to come back in here and I have to deck this block just a smidge, I'm out of spec on my protrusion, which means I have to come in and I have to mill the top of the cylinder again to make that happen. And again, money, time, all factors.
So like in the future, could this be a solution? Sure, but it's one of these things where like if that's what you're going to do, that you're paying way more money up front. You have to have more of a time to be able to have all this machine work done initially. And in our case where I want to have a backup engine, you got to do that times 2. And if you get to the point where engine number 1 has an issue, and engine number 2 has an issue, the chances of you being able to like repurpose engine number 1 or rebuild engine number 1 and put it back in the car is much, much less, borderline 0, because you can't just slap a new gasket in there. There's other machine work that has to be done.
Correct.
And like I don't want to speak out of school, but like it is possible to have a head gasket failure even with the Firelock head gasket.
Yes, it is. It is possible.
It doesn't make it impossible. It is still possible to have that failure.
Correct. And it look at it like a built motor. A built motor just means it can take more power. That doesn't make it indestructible.
Right.
Someone along the way is going to destruct it.
Yeah. You push something, further and further, eventually you will find its limit. There's a limit to everything.
Exactly. Did we need to find the limit of a Firelock head gasket? No. Would we have found it? Would we have found it? I think so. If we had done this with the 625 studs or the ARP 2000s, I still think that we would have had an issue. So we have something going on. Right now, we don't know what. So we're going to start digging into it and we're going to see.
And I think like as we're winding down here for this part, and there will be a part 2 of this conversation, but I will warn you in advance that it could be a month or 2, maybe even a little bit longer. Could get into the winter months before we've got enough time to actually like really do what we need to do, compile the tests that we need to do, and have hopefully a positive result to tell you, I think we've cracked it.
Mhm.
But going into this, this was, yeah, there's so many factors to consider, but budget and time are such big factors. You cannot, it is a real trap to kind of throw either one of them out the window,
Mhm.
because consideration for time and simplicity means you have way more options if things go haywire, as they did for us this year, to try and find a solution
Yep.
and keep the car going. And again, for us with Pikes Peak, having one shot at it per year, that's why it's such a priority. You know, if you're running a series and you're doing 6 races in a year and you end up having to miss one or you DNF in one because of mechanical, I mean, it's probably not the greatest, but you can absorb it because you've got more runs at it. And
You've
then
got you've got more time to do that.
yeah,
So that's where we currently are on things.
yeah.
And
And
once we get some more information, we're going to come back and share what we find.
yeah, but right now
And
we don't
with
have
that,
anything conclusive, but we're starting to get some hints of the direction
yeah,
that we need to look.
yeah, we have a direction to look in. We have a number of factors that you and I have talked about,
Yeah,
and we've got a whole bunch of people that are smarter than you and I that we're going to bring in, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about what we found and
yeah,
why it's doing what it's doing.
yeah.
And
And
hopefully, in the end, it makes things better for everyone. And unless you sleep through class, maybe we'll learn something.
that's right. That's right. Well, and we're learning a lot going through all this. And I guess the point that I would end on is, man, data, like having data
Yep.
collection to be able to look at what's going on in context in as big of a picture as you possibly can, so you can see what's happening in the engine, is a huge factor. Because, for instance, like if we wouldn't have had the coolant pressure data on this engine that we ran at Pikes Peak, I would not have
Mm.
known necessarily that something had gone wrong to basically pull the engine before anything really significant starts to happen,
Yeah.
and try and okay, what can we do to fix this? What are our options? That sort of thing. Yeah, data is such a key piece of the equation.
Your ability to monitor that coolant pressure saved you a lot of money down the road
Yeah, this could have been
because
way more expensive.
when something failed, you noticed it and you stopped
Yeah,
and you looked at why it happened, as opposed to just keep going, and at which point in time things get much more expensive.
and it's going to be the key piece of information that hopefully lets us find the solution and know that we found the solution,
Yeah.
because we have the data point that is now the measuring stick, so that we'll know when something works. That there's no guesswork involved. There's a very clear indicator of, yep, everything is working fine. So that is the goal, is to be able to find that solution and have that data plot that, yep, everything is working, we're in good shape. So that is the goal that we are moving towards, and hopefully within a handful of months we will at least have a big step in that direction.
Yep. And then you'll see us back here and we'll be talking about that.
Yes, and Clint, I got to say, huge thank you to you and Ethan for all the help that you guys have given us, just to start the engine package, to put it all together, to get us to this point. And I can definitely say that, we would not have any idea of what we were doing if it wouldn't have been for all the conversations, the help that you guys at Turn Concepts have been to help us work through and figure out what might be going on here. So
Yeah.
hugely
Well, thank you
appreciate
very much.
everything that you guys have done for us.
Thank you. And
So
I will let Ethan know as well.
yes, thank you. Well, so thanks to you guys at home. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your support as always. And until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning.
Take care, guys.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.